This week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry, with agriculture broadcaster Orion Samuelson and yours truly, Max Armstrong, and featuring agriculture meteorologist Greg Solier. This week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Firestone. You never farm alone. Coming up on this weekend's broadcast, so many farmers are thinking about planting and some are already in the fields. Hello, everyone. We welcome you to This Week in Agribusiness. I'm here alongside Mike Pearson, and boy, farmers are itching to get out there, and some have been indeed putting in seed.
They really have, Max. The United States is a big place with farmers way down south all the way to up north, and those southern guys are running.
And don't you think they're more thinking about early planting, especially soybean growers who've had success putting in early soybean seed?
Yes, there's a definite trend towards going earlier and earlier.
Let's switch to Texas to check on Todd Kimbrell, who's been out of the field planting corn there, not too far south of Dallas, Texas. Todd, how's it been going in recent days?
It's going good. Planting fast and furious, probably 2/3 of the way through. Lots of corn going in the ground in the area here.
And you're in a spot where not too many days ago there was snow piled around. You posted a picture. You were clearing off some roads that had snow on them.
That's correct. First time in my life I've ever cleaned snow off of a county road here. All-time record lows, and here we are today, 70-degree high and planting corn. Who would have ever thought?
So what did that do to your planting prospects then? How are you finding those fields going in?
It's going good. Ground's mellow. Best planting conditions we've probably had in several years, I would say, here in our little area. Everything's going really good. Little on the wet side, but nothing like we've fought the past few years.
To what degree do you no-till plant in your part of the world? Is there quite a bit of no-till?
We're mostly conventional. This heavy black soil, it's tough to dry out in the spring, and no-till, it really presents big challenges when it's wet here.
When do you usually plant?
This is normal. So first week of March is our sweet spot. We usually start last week of February. But right now it's really right in the middle of our sweet spot.
Todd, I've got to ask you, we've got a lot of folks here getting concerned about planting intentions and wondering what all's going in the ground. I wondered, with this recent rally, are you seeing your neighbors change some acres around, or are a lot of guys just running hard with corn right now?
Pretty hardcore corn, a little cotton acre bump possibly, but I think we're robbing acres from other crops other than corn, maybe a little less wheat and more corn. But overall, I'd say the cotton acres may be up just a tad, but still heavy corn here.
When you think about your neighborhood down there, Todd, what are the typical crops in the rotation?
So corn, wheat, sorghum, cotton, that's the big four here. A few beans here and there, but very, very little beans in our area.
Gotcha. And you're a predominantly dry land operation. Are you getting concerned at all about moisture into the spring?
We're in pretty good shape right now. We're a little on the dry side, but that's really how we like it right now. When we're wet during planting, it's a real big challenge for us. I would say we're in perfect shape right now. We're going to need rain fairly soon. We got a chance of rain coming this weekend, but overall, I'd say conditions are about as good as we could ask for.
Todd, some of your earlier planted corn, has it emerged now?
We're just starting to pop, so I haven't gotten to look at it during the daylight, so I don't know how good it's emerged, but I know we're starting to emerge on our early planted stuff.
What does your schedule look like on these days when you're planting long days? When do you start and when are you wrapping it up in the evening?
We're trying to be running by daylight, and we've been running till 9 or 10 at night. Probably should push a little harder because we got rain coming, but the days are long as it is.
I can imagine. We hope we haven't delayed you too much, sir. We'll check with you another day. Todd, nice to talk to you.
Check in with me. Enjoyed it.
All right, sir. We'll see you. Todd Kimbrell in the field planting corn, Itasca, Texas, south of Dallas-Fort Worth.
Well, it's time to dive into these volatile markets, and to help us make sense of them, we've got Darren Newsom from Darren Newsom Analysis. And Darren, earlier this week, we had a lot of traders eagerly awaiting a USDA supply and demand report that came and was kind of a snooze fest. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't know that we had. I mean, I get it. We might have had some traders. I just have a hard time believing that they really look at this stuff anymore. And if we look at the total volume, open interest changes, it just doesn't seem like anyone was overly interested. The reason being is because we already know what the fundamentals of the market are, and so USDA's latest guesses, here, they're there, whatever they might turn out to be. And as you said, there were no changes. They basically left corn, soybeans, wheat, all the supply and demand tables were left unchanged. So, not surprising. We already know really what the fundamental situation is. We can look at basis, we can look at spreads, and so we can go from here. I mean, now we wait to see how South American harvest progresses, and we slowly make our way towards planting season.
Well, let's dive into those soybeans first, because we are kind of in the thick of South American harvesting. They've been substantially delayed this year. Darren, when you look out at how the markets are reacting to this news coming out of Brazil, what's your general take? Are the Chinese just standing by until we see what supplies are?
I think so. The Chinese have made a lot of purchases of the United States soybean supplies. They've really pulled our supplies down. So we had all these sales on the books, and now if we look at unshipped sales, those have been whittling back, and we're just not making new sales at this point. Still, overall demand's projected in that 2.1, 2.2 based on just the amount that's on the books at this point. So as long as we don't see a lot of cancellations, we're still going to see solid exports this year for U.S. soybeans. The real key is right now it doesn't matter what Brazil's production is. It doesn't matter what Argentina's production is, because we have the May July future spread sharply inverted. And so until that changes, we're looking at a longer term supply and demand situation that's just bullish. We got basis for the short term running higher than it has the previous 4 or 5 years. We've got an inverted forward curve. This market's bullish. I mean, and we're looking ahead to when those production numbers are actually known or they're in-house for South America. China's going to probably have to come back to the United States at some point. Either that, or we're going to have to see a dramatic change in the way this forward curve's set up.
So, Darren, you said something there that I'm sure a lot of growers' ears perked up at. The trend is bullish. And, of course, we know the old crop supply is very, very tight. When you take a look at new crop beans, we got a lot of growers getting ready to put them in the ground. Is the scenario still as bullish? Are you still optimistic prices are going to move substantially higher here on new crop beans?
Yeah, I was just writing about that earlier this week. We've still got it. If we look at that Nov 2021 to July 2022 forward curve, it's 39.5-cent inverse. It's incredible for this time of year, particularly with all the unknowns of acreage and planting and spring and summer weather and so on. It's a 39.5-cent inverse. Yes, it's well back from the 60-some-odd cent inverse that we saw a couple months ago, meaning we have seen some commercial selling. But the bottom line is it's still bullish. It's still long-term bullish throughout the entirety of the 2021-22 marketing year. We're going to be dealing with this. We're going to be dealing with tighter supply situation for quite some time.
Tighter supply, stronger demand. It's impacting soybeans, impacting corn, and Darren, it's driving a lot of different markets, but cotton is one of those. Was talking to a grower here at the start of the show, and cotton acres certainly look appealing for a lot of folks. What's your take on the cotton market?
Yeah, cotton, is a very similar situation. If we look out at its, Dec March new crop forward, not forward curve, but future spread, it's inverted. I mean, it's the same story almost in whatever market we want to look at. Just like corn and soybeans are going to be fighting for acres, cotton's going to be fighting for acres because we have a tighter supply, and that's indicated again by the spreads, by the way the market's acting. We've seen old crop cotton just skyrocket. Now it does look like it's put in a top, at least a short, an intermediate term top here recently. So could back off a little bit, but my guess is it's going to find some renewed buying interest. And as we look ahead to new crop, cotton's going to be in the mix of things trying to find acres. There's going to be a lot of crops needing acres this year, and I just don't know that there's going to be enough for everyone.
There certainly are, and we'll be back to talk more of those crops with Darren Newsom here in just a bit, so don't go away. This portion of This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by the Soybean Checkoff. Tips, videos, how-tos, and more. If it has to do with ag tech, you'll find it in the Tech Tool Shed, your unbiased one-stop resource. And we're back talking markets with Darren Newsom from Darren Newsom Analysis. Darren, you talked about the incredible demand story that we've had pushing up crop prices pretty well across the country and around the world. And corn has certainly been a beneficiary of that since August. Does this old crop market still have room to move higher?
You know, if I'm looking at any of the old crop markets that could be getting a bit questionable, it might be corn. It's gone a long ways. I mean, yes, the May July future spread still inverted. Basis is not as bullish as what we've seen in soybeans. It's stabilizing in here. We've seen a lot of corn bushels move to town, and I think we're going to continue to see that ahead of planting season. But probably one of the more interesting things that's happened, you know, everyone wants to talk about USDA. Well, since they basically ignored any changes in their March report, left everything unchanged. That means their ending stocks to use number was also unchanged, leaving it at about 10.6%. This continues to look now, after 4 years of overestimating U.S. stocks, now looks like they're underestimating. So at some point, the market could realize this as well. We could start to see some pressure on not only the May-July spread, but on basis, see the cash market start to come down. So there's some, you know, I'm still bullish corn, but there's just some warning signs out there that we probably ought to pay attention to.
You know, Darren, it's fascinating. When we look around, particularly at the commodity markets outside of agriculture, we see incredible interest from hedge funds, from large-scale money managers. Everybody seems to be wanting to jump into commodities. Is that something that's going to help support pricing throughout this summer, or is that kind of a flash in the pan until this economy reopens?
It's interesting you mentioned that, Mike, because we've got a big thing coming up on March 15th, and that is the CME has proposed, and it looks like it's going to go through, and it looks like it's going to begin on the 15th. It's going to allow funds to basically double their positions in the ag commodities again. Last time we saw something like this with a combination of bullish fundamentals and increased fund activity was 2005, 2006, and we all know what happened then. But you mentioned the outside markets. I talked about this in my most recent weekly column. We have got inverted forward curves almost everywhere you want to look. Energy complex, grain and oil seeds. We've even got bullish hog markets as far as spreads go. Will it continue? Everyone's wanting to invest and bank on the idea that we're going to see inflation. I'm one of the few out there who still sees a potential uptrend in the U.S. dollar, and if so, that kind of throws a monkey wrench into all of this inflation talk. We need to see the dollar get some strength. Right now, it's looking a little bit better, but it's very vulnerable to continued selling because of the amount of dollars that are being flooded into the system at this point.
Yeah, and you know, the dollar has certainly seen weakness throughout the year, which, Darren, undoubtedly helped our export pace. In fact, one of the more interesting pieces of news this past week was that 3 tankers full of ethanol are heading to China. Are we unlocking some new demand here in your mind?
No, not yet. We might. But I mean, you and I both know, Mike, this has been a story now for 5-10 years, how China was going to all of a sudden turn ethanol friendly and they were going to be buying all the ethanol from the United States and so on. It's 3 tankers. Let's see if it continues. Let's see if we can actually start to build something on this right now. You know, the bottom line, corn fundamentals are bullish. Is ethanol a part of it? Absolutely. But ethanol, petroleum industry as a whole, probably on the downhill side, probably later rather than sooner, but still on a downhill slide.
Darren, I want to turn our focus over to the livestock markets. Live cattle have certainly had an interesting year, to say the least. We're coming through here. We're looking at the summer. We're looking at grilling. What are your thoughts here for live cattle pricing as we get through the second quarter?
You know, the biggest thing that jumps out at me right now is that we've got cash. Reportedly, cash is sitting around the 113, 114 with the April future still up at 119. And we add into that the April-June future spread has moved to par, if not a little bit below par, just incredibly weak, reflecting incredibly bearish short-term fundamentals. We've got a lot of cattle on feed. They're coming out heavy. As far as moving into the packing plants, they're coming in heavy. So there's really no incentive for packers to push prices at this point. The problem is, what if this leaks over into the spring and summer? Then we could see similar activity in the June-August spread.
All right. Could be some activity as we get through the rest of this year. Darren Newsom from Darren Newsom Analysis, thanks so much for taking the time to chat with us this week.
Oh, thank you, Mike.
Chad Colby's look at agriculture technology comes your way next, brought to you by the IBM Watson Decision Platform, combining AI with Internet of Things data to help agribusiness increase yields, improve quality, and drive sustainability. It's been hard to miss on the social media in recent days. Farmers have been getting their equipment ready for the season ahead. Now, that includes maintenance inside, what you don't see, but then they're also taking care of the outside. Chad Colby joins us this weekend for a little additional guidance.
You got to have the right tools for the right jobs. Hi, everyone. I'm Chad Colby. And if you recall here in the past, we did a segment on how to correct paint on your tractor. And I fielded so many questions about the technology and tools that we used, and I wanted to follow up. This system is from Rupa's, and right now I'm taking the orbital polisher out of the box. That is the Mark III. Now, the Mark III is more of a bigger orbital polisher. They do make them in smaller sizes to get around small objects, but you can see right here, the pads just Velcro right on the machine. It comes basically with everything you need. I think it's important to understand this is a professional grade tool, and in your hands, it's going to feel that way, okay? It's got a long cord, almost 30 feet long, which makes it super handy to plug in and use. It also has a control there you can see with my thumb where I can adjust the RPM of the polisher, and it does have a progressive trigger. And that's hooked to like a speed module. So that trigger feels pretty substantial, which is pretty neat. So it doesn't just hit the trigger and go to wide open RPM. Now, this is a systems approach. What I want you to notice is the pads match the product. The white matches the white polish. The yellow matches the fine cut. And the blue is more of a coarse cut. You combine that with the tool, and the outcome's pretty impressive. You can see on this John Deere hood, we had to use that coarser cut to make it look good. But do your homework beforehand. These are professional tools, but the outcome is professional also. For This Week in Agribusiness, I'm Chad Colby.
Thanks, Chad. And not only is polishing those machines a great way to look sharp in the field, it can actually help improve your bottom line by improving some resale values. But folks, don't go away. We'll be taking a look at more machinery later on in the program, specifically the Orthman One Tripper, which was on display at the virtual Farm Progress Show.
Welcome back here to This Week in Agribusiness. You know, Mike, we're coming out of the meeting season, and this year it's been very different. Most years, farm organization leaders have been away from the farm. They've been at the meetings. This is kind of a time to decompress for them, I think, ahead of the planting season.
You know, it certainly is, and we don't think about it very often, but the leaders at commodity organizations or co-ops or all these different groups that ag relies on, they take a lot of time to get together and put these long-term plans together, Max.
Quite often it involves extensive travel away from the farm. You have to have somebody back home rock solid to keep things going, and most farm leaders will acknowledge that were it not for that spouse or the offspring or perhaps a parent who is doing all of the work back there on the farm, they wouldn't be able to provide their role in leadership.
That's right. Most farms don't shut down just because you got to go to a meeting, Max.
But farm leaders will also tell you, while they're not paid well, there are certainly rewards of being involved in farm leadership. I talked about that with Dan Farney this week. He chairs the United Soybean Board. He's a Central Illinois farmer. I noted the wide geography of the members of the board on which he serves, and also the very excellent farming operations they represent and the knowledge that they convey to each other.
When we're at board meetings and stuff, it just amazes me what all the different board members do and what all they're involved in. I just enjoy it. It's just amazing.
When you take a look at the accomplishments of the USB over the years, since its existence, I mean, are there some things that really stand out in your mind that have really been home runs on behalf of the soybean producers?
So there's a couple of our past successes that I think are really unique. And one of those is like biodiesel. And that is using currently about 6.5 to 7 billion pounds of soybean oil. It's the second largest use of soybean oil. So if we didn't have it, that would affect soybean prices quite a bit. And then another success that is a little bit more recent is our introduction of the Ohio Lake soybean oil and the Ohio Lake type of bean that we're growing. And this oil comes from beans that are bred to produce an oil that has higher content of that high oleic property. And it gives a unique uses in both the food space and industrial uses.
Some of the industrial uses really get your attention because of the potential for the number of bushels used. I mean, you hear the numbers and you say, hey, wait a minute, this is real. This could really perhaps elevate the price a little bit and make a significant contribution. Am I right?
Absolutely. And I just was talking about the high oleic soybeans, and I think we're just scratching the surface of what we can do with that oil. Maybe especially in the industrial use area. We're currently testing the use of a polymer, or what I would call a binder, made from high oleic soybean oil. And my understanding that it would allow like up to 30% more recycled asphalt material to be used in a new road when they lay it down. And there's like, I don't know, 300 million tons of asphalt laid down each year or something like that. It is truly a use that could make a big difference.
And would require a couple hundred bushels of beans per mile. Didn't I read that? Did I read that correctly?
I believe that's true, yes.
You put that together after a while, that's some real significant usage by all means. When you're talking to a grower and they'll inevitably say, well, what have you done for me lately? And what really is out there on the horizon, what excites you most when you've got a very short period of time to explain to somebody what the United Soybean Board does for them, what the checkoff of their dollars is doing? What do you tell them?
Well, first thing I say to them, it's extremely interesting to be involved in it. But one of the biggest things you got to be willing to do, you got to be willing to invest some time and to go into meetings. We say there's 3 meetings a year, but in reality, that turns into committee meetings and other things in between our board meetings. And then if you're willing to invest that time, the benefits are you get to learn so much about cutting edge ideas. What's new coming down the road? You can be involved in thinking about solutions to some of the challenges that are facing ag. But probably to me, getting to know other farmers from around the country. There's 26 different states that are, 26 different QSSBs, which we call Qualified State Soybean Boards. And they're all sending farmers to these board meetings. And like we say, there's 78 of them, and there's just no end to the discussions and conversations that we get to have.
Well, it's a real trade-off by all means. Those of you who contribute your time to working on the board on behalf of fellow growers sacrifice some time away from home. And sometimes to get to a meeting, I know some of your members will maybe drive 100 miles, then take 2 or 3 flights to get to the meeting. It can be a real challenge. But thank you to you, Dan, and all of your colleagues for what you're doing on behalf of the U.S. soybean industry.
Thank you.
There are some exciting things going on, to be sure, when you look at those new uses. There are 2 different uses here when it comes to roads. We might clarify that a little bit.
You bet, Max. There's one, it's a concrete use that's applied on the joints. And if you use this product on a mile of 2-lane highway, you treat all the joints with this pour-on concrete enhancer, it's going to use 200 bushels of soybeans.
Then they can also use more recycled asphalt, I understand, using the high oleic soybean oil, and it saves about $3,000 per mile, I think it is, in terms of highway maintenance costs. So it's very interesting to see these new uses coming along, made possible by the farmers who fund those programs of the soybean checkoff. There's more coming up on this weekend's broadcast. Stay with us here. This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry, is brought to you by Firestone. You never farm alone. Welcome back to this weekend's This Week in Agribusiness, where we focus on the U.S. agriculture scene. But this time of the year, Mike, many eyes are on South America as the crops are coming in down there.
Absolutely, Max. This time of year, of course, the soybean harvest is in full swing down in Brazil and in Argentina. And in Brazil in particular, that second crop of corn, that safrinha corn, is preparing to go in the ground. Now, this year, we've seen a lot of images on social media and on the ag media of the challenges that growers down in Brazil have faced. So I reached out to a friend of mine. He's with an agribusiness company down in Mato Grosso, and I said, hey, what are you seeing? And he said it's tough. The heavy rains the past several weeks have really damaged quality. Not only are these crops not getting out of the field, they're soaking wet. He sent a couple images here of those soaking soybeans that are starting to sprout in the fields. This is causing a decline in expected yield. They expect it to be about down 2%, according to the Mato Grosso Institute of Ag Econ. And a lot of the experts are anticipating an increase in safrinha corn acreage based on the pricing. Down there, it makes a lot of sense in Brazil to plant corn, but the delay in the planting season caused by the delay in the soybean harvest, they think locally in Mato Grosso, that's going to limit the amount of second crop corn acres going in the ground.
Oh, it'll be interesting to watch. And what about logistics problems? Some people are saying, you know, the pandemic is far worse in Brazil than it is in the United States, and they wonder if there could be some labor problems in getting that crop moved to the export ports. Their port system is much different than it used to be, though. It's not just right in the central part of the country. They have the northern ports now, so there's a much more varied system, not so prone to disruption as it once was.
That's the truth. They've got rail lines now running to the port, and they've got a paved highway that runs to the port, which is significantly reducing the amount of time it takes trucks to get from the central part of harvesting all the way to the coastline, Max.
So we'll stay tuned. We'll watch it with interest, to be sure.
Absolutely.
Now, agriculture meteorologist Greg Solier brings us his farm weather forecast for the nation for the week ahead. It's presented by Pivot BioProven, the nitrogen-producing microbes that stay put, whether or not. Have you stocked up on your batteries for the time change weekend? I'm sure you're being asked that by others. My firefighter friends would want me to ask you, how do you handle the time change? It's tough on some folks.
Well, you and I in the radio business who have to get up early, I still do that on a regular basis. You know what? I don't like it too much. Takes a while to get used to.
Well, I think maybe some of this is about the age relates to that too.
Yeah, that category too.
But as we look at the weather, this is often a time of such dynamic change.
Yes.
And we've seen that in the past week. The temperature swing.
That's right. And moisture in one form or another, and what was on the ground, i.e. that snow cover, virtually gone. But I think with time here this week, with round 2 of a plain state system, we're going to put it back on into play. Pacific Northwest, still an onshore flow. The cold air abating through the Canadian prairie. A little dipsy-do here. It'll be a couple of disturbances on the move. Really no significant sign of maybe some fieldwork opportunities. Moisture doesn't look all that impressive. Matter of fact, the system will head to the south and east, wash out, cooler to colder, but some at least late winter, early springtime sunshine into play here. The next weather system coming ashore into coastal sections. So pretty much as it ought to be here for the waning days of wintertime and the almost start of meteorological springtime. We do have more moisture in the forecast, and we saw it last week into the valleys of California. The Sierra Ranges, though, they have been hurting. It's been a disappointing precip season out there. Only maybe 60% of normal runoff potential. That's about 15 inches, and we've already tapped into that. Not looking good, but it should be no surprise. This is a trademark of La Nina, so enjoy the moisture while you may with one weather system here. Another one that'll bring some late season snow. Colorado, sections of the southwest high plains, and severe weather potential 2 points out of the east, but we're back into quiet weather. Southern California, new moisture late in the week. Northern valleys and a quiet weather pattern across the southwestern sections of the country too, Max.
You mentioned the possibility of severe weather. I was thinking about that this week when I saw those temperature differentials. This is the time that we really can open up some of that activity.
Exactly. In March and April. And you know, last year was relatively quiet and benign. I think this will be a different story this year with this kind of weeding, but still kind of moderate La Nina setup. Here's the latest weather systems of a wintry nature coming off some of that record warmth last week all the way up to Bismarck, pushing 70 degrees. We had 80-degree readings in parts of the central Corn Belt. A dose of late winter springtime reality with this weather system moving on through. There'll be some significant rains as well early in the week, but back into a quiet setup. Northern and central plains mid to late week across the Corn Belt locales as well. Temperatures returning back to seasonal expectations. Southern plains states areas, here's that weather system laying out the meaningful moisture, a ways to go on the drought pattern, but we have seen some improvement. Some areas in the southeastern plains. Note this warm sector right here and that low coming out of the Oklahoma Panhandle, slow to move. Showers and thunderstorms virtually all week long from the Delta region onto the east.
On into the eastern part of the country, some producers have been able to get some work done. Will that continue?
I think so, by and large. north. No major systems on the maps and charts, with the exception of the Corn Belt locale, central and south. Significant rain, maybe some wet snow as well to stick to the ground for a short while. You'll watch the streams and rivers again in this particular part of the country. Pretty quiet across the northeast and New England. Seasonal late season cold there. And we get a little boundary up towards the Sioux. High pressure back in early spring like sunshine for the Corn Belt seasonal temperatures, and a pretty quiet weather pattern too. A couple of rain snow showers into parts of the St. Lawrence River Valley. This will be an active weather pattern. Again, need to watch the streams and rivers. Kentucky, Tennessee, points on south where a series of disturbances on this slow moving low pressure in the southwest to northeast jet stream pattern. Outbreaks of showers and thunderstorms multi-day likely to plan out, and by the late part of the week this is a slow moving system again. Florida will take the moisture, but again severe weather potential running from the Gulf Coast into parts of the Carolinas. Certainly use care and caution. Back to dry time though late in the week west of the Mississippi.
Now Greg Soye is back with his extended farm weather forecast for the country. Presented by Pivot Bio Proven. Visit pivotbio.com to find a representative near you. From our previous visit with him, it sounded like it could be a wet week ahead for some folks. You know, one thing that comes to mind, and you mentioned severe weather, Greg.
Yes.
Alabama has seen so many outbreaks. I'm thinking back over the past maybe 2 to 5 years. Has there been an increase in that area?
There has, and even as long back as maybe 5, 10, 15 years. It's almost like a separate tornado alley that has established itself early in this season across parts of the Delta region, Mid-South, and of course the typical corridor from Oklahoma into the Midwest. And we're going to kind of ramp things up. Pretty quiet last year, much busier this year, often running in this part of the country with a northward movement anticipated. Here is the rainfall: 1, 2, 3, 4 inches, maybe locally higher. Do not need any more of it into this part of the country. Up through Kentucky and Tennessee, we'll take the moisture as we continue to nibble away at the drought pattern. Back into dry time in the desert Southwest, something through California, the Pacific Northwest, and some late season snows that are ongoing but winding on down across parts of the plain states. That moisture as well into the northeast and New England, but a busy one this week, Max, over the southeastern plains and southeastern sections of the country.
2 to 4 inches or maybe more, you said, in the southeast. I've noticed through the years you tend to be a little bit conservative, that quite often there are extremes above your upper end.
Yeah, that's right, where those storms recur and repeat. The old training effect. Would be surprised plays out again this year. Here's the temperature outlook here as we head on through Palm Sunday, and well, some cold air. Still some wintry conditions to contend with, much below parts of Big Sky country. A freeze again into West Texas. Still clean up and recovery. Don't forget about these folks down here from that devastating winter weather pattern. Some warmth over the eastern and southeastern portions of the country. Note that U-shaped configuration, so weather systems drop in the Pacific Northwest through the plains, lift out across the Ohio Valley. Still the potential for some late season snows here. Quiet through parts of southern Canada, desert Southwest, and again a busy weather pattern from the Ohio River on southeast.
Well, will we see any warmth coming into that week ahead of Easter?
Yeah, the cold is going to try and moderate some. Temperatures at least inching back to seasonal norms. Parts of the Central Plains, Ohio Valley, a few degrees below average throughout the Corn Belt, Central Plains. Still some winter conditions across the Canadian Prairie. Look at the warmth over the eastern part of the country, Gulf Coast, and across areas of Texas. From a moisture standpoint, stormy. Again, this wide range of temperatures anticipated to generate severe weather here. Late season snows upper Midwest, parts of the plains, Pacific Northwest, and a busy weather pattern too as we ease up on their dryness and drought into the Northeast and New England.
That first full week of April, do you see storms there?
Looks like perhaps the potential for it. Again, the trough kind of weakening or flattening, or more of a almost west to east orientation, but this cool to cold puddle of air that likely lays out here in this particular part of the country could be the focal point here in the next couple of months to maybe transition slightly to the east, and so the expectation is ongoing wet weather here. But at least we'll enjoy some warming soils, Ohio Valley into the southeastern portion of the country as well. Still a busy one. Parts of Northern California will take it here, the moisture in one form or another. Late season snows up near the Canadian border towards the Sioux, the northeast of New England. Severe weather potential, ongoing flooding as well for parts of the southern Corn Belt, and precipitation about normal across parts of the Central Plains. Back to dry time for Texas, back west across sections of California.
Next on This Week in Agribusiness, it's Max's Tractor Shed, spotlighting another great American tractor.
I think sometimes it means more to own a particular tractor if you know where it's been, if you know who owned it before. That's the story of the tractor in the shed this weekend. It's brought to you by Store Lock Tool Cabinets. You'll love the quality. You'll love the durability. You will love the way it looks in your shop. Talk to the folks at Store Lock. They're online, storelock.com, or give them a call at STORLOC. It's an 800 number, 800-STORLOC. Tell them Max sent you. Well, Dr. Marshall Martin had a superb career with Purdue University in West Lafayette, Indiana, a highly regarded agriculture economist with a lot of knowledge about South America. I traveled with him one time in the Southern Hemisphere, going by all of those soybean and corn fields. At the end of last year, he slowed down a little bit. He retired at Purdue, even though he's still teaching some, and that gives him more time for something like this. This is a 656 hydrodiesel. Made in 1968 by International Harvester, but above and beyond that, it was in the Farmall land collection that Jerry Mez had there in Avoca, Iowa. So I would imagine it'll have a special place right back there with some other red tractors in the Hoosier State that Dr. Martin owns, along with that 656 hydrodiesel. Well, what's for sale of the week ahead with the folks from Big Iron? Mark Stock joins us for his weekly report.
Well, folks, March the 17th on BigIron.com, there'll be equipment selling from 25 different states. Rona's Rough Bark Trucking Inc. out of Shippenville, Pennsylvania, will be selling a Kenworth W900 tri-axle truck. They've also got a Mack GU713 tri-axle truck. Daigle and Houghton Inc. out of Scarborough, Maine, will sell a Volvo Autocar tri-axle dump truck. They've also got a Western Star tandem axle day cab truck tractor that will sell, and a Kenworth W900. Travis Stedinger from Pontiac, Illinois, will sell a New Holland Workmaster 75 two-wheel drive tractor. They've also got a Honda Pioneer UTV. Jay Heim from Logan, Iowa, will be selling a Case IH Magnum 260 mechanical front tractor with 3,343 hours. They've also got the Case IH 7240 mechanical front tractor selling. Triple Ace Inc. out of Hazleton, Idaho. They've got 4 Logan 6-row potato planters selling and 2 Spudnik 1130 material handlers. Plus, folks, we've been doing a benefit auction for the national sorghum producers for several years. Please support that good organization and bid on BigIron.com March the 17th.
The FFA Chapter Tribute is sponsored by Nationwide, the #1 farm insurer in the country. To register your FFA chapter, go to nationwidesupportsffa.com. That's nationwidesupportsffa.com. Nationwide, we stand for you.
Well, This Week in Agribusiness is proud to continue our salute to FFA, and we are learning about the Iowa State Officer Team. Joining us this week is Mia Gibson. Mia is from Elgin, Iowa. And Mia, what first got you involved in FFA?
I have grown up on a beef farm my whole life in Northeast Iowa, where we raise Red Angus animals focused on carcass genetics. And this really got me started into agriculture. I have a huge passion for agriculture. So then in 7th grade, that is when I joined FFA, as our North Fayette Valley FFA program has a middle school program. Along with this, my older brother and dad were both FFA members. So this is really what got me started, but I never thought FFA would get me as far as it has and all the leadership skills that it has taught me, which I'm very grateful for.
Well, let's talk about that. You've risen your way up to become state secretary. Speaking of leadership, what does the role of state secretary look like during a COVID pandemic, Mia?
Yeah, this year has definitely been really different than most years. We didn't get elected until June, which normally it happens in April, but this meant that our state officer team has been fortunate enough to be able to actually meet in person and plan stuff. So throughout the year, we have actually been able to host different conferences. So as secretary, I've helped prepare for this, organize stuff for that. Along with that, the reporter, Blake Vanderkamp, and I work very closely to manage all of our social media. So anything that posts on Iowa FFA, that comes for Blake and I. And that's really what the secretary, as I'm serving as secretary, that is what I'm doing.
Fantastic. It's all about keeping in touch with the members out there in the country. Fantastic, Mia. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. We know that after you graduate, you want to stay involved in the ag industry. And we here at This Week in Agribusiness wish you the very best of luck.
Thank you.
Now, Samuelson Says. Insight and commentary from Orion Samuelson.
Agriculture is approaching a very special day here in this country. National Agriculture Day, Tuesday, March 23rd. And many programs across the country will salute the producers and providers of food for this country as well as many other countries on the planet. Mike Pearson and I have been invited to speak to the South Dakota corn growers. And in doing research for that presentation, let me share with you some of the significant South Dakota parts of agriculture. 97% of farms in South Dakota, get this, are family owned, and over 2,700 have been in the same family for more than 100 years. The average size of a farm in South Dakota, 1,443 acres, and there are 48,913 farmers on 29,968 farms and ranches. Agriculture in South Dakota contributes $31.5 billion to the state's economy, contributes about $500 million annually to the state's tax revenue, and production, agriculture, and its value-added industries employ over 132,000 South Dakotans. South Dakota has more than 19 million acres of cropland and 23 million acres of pasture land. Oh, and ethanol is a big deal to South Dakota. There are 16 ethanol plants in the state, processing 424 million bushels of corn a year. Well, multiply that by the other states in the United States, and you get an idea why we should salute agriculture and its producers National Agriculture Day. My thoughts on Samuelson Says.
Stay with us. When we come back, we'll take a look at the Orthman One Tripper from the Farm Progress Virtual Experience. The Farm Progress Virtual Experience is the gift that keeps on giving. You can check it out at farmprogressshow.com. This week, we want to talk about the Orthman One Tripper. It's a fantastic new tool to help growers get in there and till that soil ahead for planting.
The One Tripper from Orthman. Designed, engineered, and built to last for years of production, the Orthman One Tripper manages the three principles of precision tillage: ideal seedbed preparation, precision nutrient placement, and optimal root zone conditioning, all of which can be accomplished in a variety of field conditions, including wheat, stubble, cover crop, standing corn stalks, and many more. With unprecedented flexibility to customize seedbed preparation, the One Tripper is available in 4 to 18 row configurations, with 22-inch to 40-inch spacing using Orthman's time-tested rigid or folding toolbars. To maximize one-pass productivity, the One Tripper can be utilized alone or in unison with one of the many fertilizer-carrying options Orthman has to offer. As the leader in precision strip-till systems and equipment around the world, Orthman is continually innovating more efficient ways to farm. With configurations up to 18 rows and a full range of high-capacity dry and liquid fertilizer carrying capabilities, The Orthman One Tripper is the leader in high-volume, high-efficiency precision tillage. Visit Orthman.com for more information and to find your local Orthman dealer. For the best agronomic news and information and to see what precision tillage research Orthman is doing around the world, visit precisiontillage.com. Orthman, they are a tough act to follow.
See that whole video and 99 others at farmprogressshow.com. Before we take a time to end the show, Max, congratulations. This is This Week in Agribusiness's 800th episode. That's incredible.
We've been at this a while, haven't we? All together, the collective experience, Samuelson, Pearson, Armstrong.
Thank you,
It's fun
Max.
to do it. Yeah, well, thank you. And thank you, folks, for joining us. We look forward to the opportunity to come to your home again next weekend. Till then, so long, everyone. Closed captioning for This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Kubota. Shape your world. This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Firestone. You never farm alone. This Week in Agribusiness is produced by OMAX Communications in association with 22 Creative Group. We invite you to visit us online at agbizweek.com.